And welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the show on 90 point, or it's 90 point, sportsnetusa.net. Corey Neyland, Mark Pavlovich, and Ed Ford with you today or tonight on another Thursday as we're talking community college athletics. And we're lucky enough to have a head coach from up north, Napa Valley College women's football or soccer coach, depending on the type of soccer fan you are. We have Mark Corbett joining us. And Mark, it's a pleasure to have you on with us. And it's fun. So let's go ahead and talk some football. Let's talk some soccer. I want to ask you first, how would you prefer to say it? That's the first question I want to say. What are we calling it?
Well, I'm glad you referred to it as football first of all. So yeah, let's stick with football. And yeah, pleasure to be on here. Thanks very much for the invite. I'm looking forward to this evening.
All right, and Mark Pavlovich, we're going to let him start with the questions because he's a football fanatic. He's been touting football and the game for as long as I've known him. And so it's a joy to actually learn stuff. I was never a football fan until basically I got to sportsnetusa.net with Mark and Ed. So, Mark, what's that first question you want to ask?
Well, I like your first question, Corey. I don't know where you came up with that, but that was a great first question. We know where it came from. But Mark, I'm gonna quickly let you tell us about your background because I found your background very interesting. Where you came from in the game of football, as a player and a coach, and so give us a little background about you before we actually get into the sport.
From a coaching or a playing background,
Both
or a
of
little
them,
bit of
please.
both.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So obviously, first of all, started playing before I started coaching. Realized that the dream of being a professional, like most young players, comes to a halt, and you have to kind of make that decision on what you're going to do next. And I enjoyed the game, enjoyed the tactics about it. So was playing and coaching at the same time, and then I had an opportunity to play beach soccer, and fortunate enough to play for the national team. So my kind of coaching went on hold a little bit, and I fully committed to representing England and traveling around the world playing beach soccer. And then when that kind of come to an end, it was again to then get serious about coaching. So I went through my badges. And finished my UEFA A license a couple of years ago. And yeah, so it's very, very interesting in terms of going through the badges and learning, first of all, from a technical point of view to then skills practices and then the 11v11 tactical side of the game, and not just from technical and tactical, but also then learning about the psychological and the social game. And kind of the more we dig into that, the kind of how relevant and how important that side of the game is for performance at the top level.
You know, Mark, you mentioned that you played, and the reason I wanted you to give us a little background, because you mentioned that you played beach volleyball. And I've watched beach volleyball, which is a slower version of soccer. But to me, it's a fundamental game of soccer because you have to be able to handle the ball very well as a dribbler, and you have to make precise passes since you're playing on sand. I'm assuming I've seen the same version here in the United States that's played over there in Europe. So it is really more of a game that the fundamentals have to be down in the game of beach soccer compared to, and I don't disparage the game on the grass, but I think basically beach soccer is that soccer that'll teach you the fundamentals much better than any other form of soccer. Am I right or incorrect?
Yeah, no, you're totally right. So in terms of your first touch, your receiving skills, bearing in mind the sand is footprints, uneven, your first touch has to be a lot more under control, and it's less forgiving as it would do on the sand, also on the grass, that you could recover from a bad touch. You don't really get to recover too much when you're playing in sand. So yeah, my first touch definitely improved when I was playing beach soccer, and then when I reverted back to playing on the grass, I actually towards my late 20s, early 30s, I found I was actually becoming a better player than I was when I was younger because of that experience that I had playing on the sand.
And
And
specifically, well, Mark, let me interrupt real quick. Specifically on that part, you mentioned first touch. I want to know, as a soccer football novice, what is that first touch, and what are the other techniques that you carried over to the grass sport rather than beach? Because it seems, for someone who doesn't know, it seems the same to me. So I want to know the technical aspect of it.
Yeah, sure. So when the ball's either passed to you or there's been a block shot and it's been rebounded to you, your first touch is actually controlling the ball, and then you have a decision to make whether you're going to dribble, you're going to run with it, you're going to pass, you're going to take a shot. So as soon as that ball's traveling to you, it's how quick can you get that ball under control, and that's what's meant by a first touch. So obviously, there's a lot more balls played in the air on the beach because of the uneven surfaces. So receiving skills with different parts of your body, so chest, thigh, head. When you're playing a physical game on the grass and the ball ends up in the air a lot, being able to control the ball out of the air with different surfaces of your body enables you to regain possession a lot more easier.
Corey, I was gonna ask Mark, because Mark, if you read the biography, it says he played senior. You look at the picture right now between the three of us. We know who the youngest one is here. So, Mark, I'm going to ask you, when they said you played senior beach soccer, and then you brought up your age talking about it, how old were you supposedly as a senior?
So senior on the grass, so senior football. In terms of you go past 18, so your youth levels that you've got, similar that you've got in the States, and then once you get past 18, you're classed as a senior playing football.
Man, Corey, we're old men.
And your playing career, we've read your accolades. What's one of the best, or the couple of the best moments you've had playing, or just the joys that you've had? Explain why it means so much to you.
I think probably my biggest one, just from a personal achievement, was making my England debut. Kind of, although I always dreamed to become a professional footballer, playing beach soccer was that for me the next best thing. So getting to represent England, walk out, singing the national anthem before a game, that's something I was very proud of, and I know my family were always watching back home, and that was that was a proud moment for them as well. And then probably my biggest achievement, I would say, was 2014 when I was named the England Player of the Year. So I was voted the best player in the country for that year. So that was something I was very proud of.
So we find you on knowing what you've done nationally for your country. All of a sudden now you're at Napa Valley. So I tried to find it, and I don't know, Corey, if you found it. I couldn't find how Napa Valley discovered you. I mean, it was sort of like you came out of nowhere. So, I mean, to at least Northern California, Napa Valley. So how did they discover you and invite you to possibly be a coach at their community college?
So it's a really interesting story, and it's one that I like to share to young players in terms of being open-minded with opportunities. So back in 2007, I had just recently started coaching. At the time, I wasn't a professional coach. I didn't do that for a living, but I enjoyed it. So I had the opportunity to come out and work for Mls Camps, which is similar now. Mls Camps doesn't exist anymore, but there's Youth Elite Soccer, there's Challenger, and they basically they provide British football coaches to come over, stay with host families, put a camp on for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then they move to another town, do the same thing, and they repeat that over the summer. So I actually first come to Napa in 2007, and very fortunate enough, if you've ever been to Napa Valley, in terms of what an amazing place it is, full of amazing people. I had a great family, or one great family, should I say. I had many great families that I was fortunate enough to stay with, but this one in particular, the Housley family, they were my host family when I was staying in Napa. And so I'd done my camp, moved on to Palo Alto and Dublin. And when I had the weekends off, I was always coming back to Napa to hang out with this particular family. And then finished 2007, went back home. The family were really keen on wanting to come to England to visit my family, which I wasn't, to be perfectly honest. I thought they were just being very nice. But why do you want to leave Napa Valley and come to reign in England? But they were true to their word. They come out early 2008, and ever since we've been back and forth. Me coming to Napa, them coming to England. Me and my wife got married in Mexico, and the family come to my wedding. So they've met all of my side of the family, my wife's side of the family. So they really have welcomed us as part of their family. So yeah, when the opportunity come to move to Napa, the family, they own Napa Valley 1839 FC, who are in the NPSL. So that was the original position I come to fill alongside Napa United, working with the club and the academy teams. And I arrived here in February to take those two roles. And then it just so happened that Napa Valley College had an opening and got in contact, and it was one that I was over the moon with to take the opportunity.
Okay, so let me follow up, because I know how you got there, Corey, but I've got to ask you, coming from a country, a continent that embraces the game of football as we call it, to a country that looks, when you say the game football, doesn't look at your sport, and because of the man in our right-hand corner of our screen, has poo-pooed the sport in the United States for all the years I have known him.
Now you're gonna have to say, oh, okay.
Okay, and Mark, I mean, you come over here with somebody with a love of the sport, so I've got to ask you, besides the love from Napa Valley, was there that part of you that said, I'm going to go over and take my expertise into an area that is still not a beloved sport in this country, or did that ever enter your mind?
It didn't, because I've always followed Napa Valley as a community, and I've seen the growth that Napa United, which is the youth team here in Napa, and I've seen them go from strength to strength in terms of the coaching staff that they've got and the level of players that are there. So I saw it more as a fun opportunity to be part of something that was definitely growing in the right direction, rather than being scared to think it was going to be a lesser level than I was used to working at.
And since Mark brought it up, I thought we were going to save that until towards the end of the conversation. But now, since you brought it up, we're going to bring it back. Now, Mark is always and has always projected that soccer is, and we all know, is the number one sport in the world. And it just hasn't caught on in America as that number 1, 2, 3, even 4, 5 sport in America. How does football or soccer in America grow more, in your opinion?
Certainly from the college levels. If I was being able to make any changes that I would want to, which is obviously never going to happen, I would like to see it being played year round. For me, coming from a country that you play a sport and you play it year round, for me doesn't make any sense that you play 2 games a week for a 3-month period, and then you don't play another competitive game for 9 months. It doesn't make any sense in terms of from a coach trying to improve a team. Physical, when you're looking at recovery times between games, all the research would suggest that you need 48 hours in between games to recover, but you've got to recover and prepare for the next game that's coming in a couple of days' time. I think that may put people off. I think if it could be played all year round, people would see more value in playing it. I do think there has been huge growth in at the younger ages. I know there's been some bad press for concussion rates in some of those other big sports. So maybe from a parent's point of view, they look at regular football as more of a safer option as a kid, for them to play when they're young children. So maybe from the youth side and the younger ages, it's growing. And I think once the national team get going again, there's a buzz, it's another wave. I think obviously with the US not making the last World Cup, probably had a negative effect on the participation rates within the sport, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, and you mentioned, well, hold up, Mark. You mentioned year round, and I wanted to go. Sorry, Mark, and I wanted to discuss with the coaching football clubs and football clubs all around the country, they seem to be coming up more prominent nowadays in America. Is that one way to more grow the sport?
Yeah, at the youth ages, they do play. Although the season's not year round, they're playing year round. So they'll play a spring league, they'll play summer tournaments, they'll then play a fall league or full season. So they're effectively playing 3 seasons within a calendar year. So at the younger ages, they are playing all year round. But then when you get into the college ages, they don't have they play competitive games for the fall. Obviously, this year it's going to be the spring, but then they don't play any more competitive, meaningful league games for 9 months before the season starts again. So that's probably why there's a big drop-off rate at that college age, because if you're doing something consistently, that becomes a routine and a habit, and it's just part of you as a person. But if you then go 9 months of not doing that thing, it very easily you get sidetracked and you have other commitments that they don't particularly have back home, because a regular season you'll be starting pre-season training in June, July. You'd play in August, and that wouldn't finish till start of May, so you have a few weeks off, and then you go again for another year.
Corey Neyland, just to put you in the smaller category, the latest numbers on soccer fans around the world, dedicated soccer fans, is 1.8 billion. These are updated numbers. Just got them yesterday on that one. So to put it that way, yeah, we know that's why you're on one side of the screen and Mark are on the other side of the screen, because we are part of those dedicated ones. The thing that's interesting, Mark, is where you brought up about the play that doesn't go all year long. I broadcasted the PDL for many years, which is a summer program that was based on, it was a religious program for soccer players that were D1. Most of the D1 players that played during the PDL during the summer were the top soccer players in the nation, which was pretty amazing, because you would talk to coaches and you'd say, well, this should be a good game. And they'd go, well, so-and-so down there at UCLA plays at UCLA. He's ranked number 2 in the nation as a goalie. And so-and-so down here on the other side from Villanova is ranked number 1. And you could see many of these young men were asked at the end of the PDL, not because of the PDL, but because they played all year long, like you stressed. They would be asked after the PDL ended, they would be getting contracts from teams over in Europe that would be looking at them because they hone their skill all year long. And so I agree with you wholeheartedly that soccer should not just be this casual game. It should be that year-round game. If they want winter sessions, they should have it, and then they can run it into fall and summer sessions. I think that's a great idea to promote the sport. To follow up on that, Let's
And
just
you,
go.
sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Mark.
So we have it. Obviously, the other team I'm head coach of is Napa Valley 1839 FC, and they play in the NPSL, which is a similar league to the PDL. But the rules that are in place where you can't play for both. We've had a couple of players who were good. They wanted to play all year round, but they had a friendly game. So this player then couldn't play for a month for me because he had one friendly to play for his college. So he had 4 weeks of not playing for the sake of one friendly. Whereas I think coaches are educated enough to be able to meet in person or pick up the phone and say, hey, we've got this game coming up. You've got this game. We can work together and make sure we don't burn out players. It's a very logical idea. It happens if university players play club back home. Coaches work together and whoever's got that most meaningful game, that player will be available. But you also then give the decision to the player: which one do you want to? And it becomes a mature conversation. And I see him. It's just no, he's our player, so he can't play. And it's actually, I don't think there's options for the players there, but the governing bodies take those decisions away from the players, and sometimes it's not for the best for the player, in my opinion. I totally get that you don't want burnout for players, and it's something I completely agree with, but I think there can be some leeway with the rules, and it will make coaches talk to each other as well.
Mark,
and you know what? That's it. I think we were going to the same place, Mark. Okay.
Well, because I want to get towards Napa Valley here. So, Mark, I just want to ask you, because when we talk about your club teams, it seems like you keep referring to the male gender, but now I know you're coaching did you coach young men and young women, which will give you the basis to go to Napa Valley?
Yeah, so with Napa United, which is the club team, my role there is head of girls soccer. Okay. I couldn't get the football one over the line, but head of girls soccer. So I predominantly oversee all of the girls' academy and club teams. However, I do coach both boys and girls. But when I refer to the boys, it's more because from a Napa Valley 1839 point of view, when they play in the summer league, that's when those clashes and conflicts come. From the girls' side of things, I've only got players who have obviously left high school and aren't playing youth soccer anymore, and there's a lack of kind of senior level women's teams in the area. So the girls I have for the college, they don't play elsewhere, whereas I know some boys in colleges would play for an NPSL or a USL2 or a PDL team as well.
Okay.
So does that mean there's a lot more competition on the women's side, on the girls' side, to come out and play, or a competition up for playing time when they play for you?
Not necessarily. It means that they kind of can be fully focused on the college and playing for the college, and then doing their other studies, and then maybe they're at that age where they've got work commitments, so they've got some part-time hours free. But certainly the girls that I work with, I know if there was a Napa Valley 1839 women's team, I'm sure they would be keen to be playing for that. But there's a real lack of kind of women's teams above the age of U19 when you come out of the youth side of the game.
Mark, when we talk about you making the transition from where you are now to community college soccer, because Corey and I had the pleasure of being out for some community college soccer this past year and watching the game. And of course, Corey can tell you why I was on the sideline. I cringed a lot watching the game on the community college level. And I looked at the past team at Napa Valley, which I think the tallest player I saw, and I don't know if these are the players that were coming back, but most of them were 5'2", 5'3", 5'4", small little young women. So as you head to Napa Valley, who didn't get many shots on goals, didn't get many games, have you had the opportunity now to, even if you don't practice, been able to FaceTime with players and start talking about attitude in soccer and fundamental things for them to work on at home?
Well, to be honest, we're very fortunate to have a very forward-thinking athletic director who's been put everything in place with protocols and a great athletic training department who have kept our players safe, doing all the relevant tests and temperature checks, and we've been able to be practicing for the last 3 weeks. So we're on field practicing. So thankfully that they're not on another Zoom like they are for school. But yeah, we've been on field. Obviously, it's non-contact, and we've got to have our precautions there. But in terms of some technical drills, some tactical understanding, I've been able to do that with the girls. And I'll just bring up your point on the stats. I do think it's a little bit harsh on the girls, the stats, because it's down to the individual coach to put those stats on. And if they don't get put on, it does look like the girls barely even made it out on the field. And I know, having speaking with them, that's not the case. But it's just the stats wasn't put in place. So I'll make sure that I'm doing that, and our profile of our program is going to be growing. And I'm fair to the girls that are giving their time up and want to be part of that program, because they deserve to have the best if they're giving their time out, and that's certainly what I aim to give them.
And speaking of the best that you can give them, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, and then we'll go back to the team.
Absolutely.
You mentioned badges for coaching and affiliate and associations for getting that, so certificates. Explain that, because I read up a lot about it, and I found it highly interesting on what you do to become a coach in football.
Yeah, so you start with your kind of country, so the Football Association. You start with that level 1 certificate, which is over a couple of weekends. It's almost like the parent volunteer coach, just to kind of get a basic certificate, and then you'll go on to your level 2, which can take maybe 9 to 15 months to complete. And then that's a bit more of an intense course, and start looking at skills practices and oppositions. And then once you've got that, you then apply, which you're not always guaranteed to get on. You have to apply, show that you're working with a team at a relatively high level, and then that's your UEFA B. So your third kind of badge on the ladder, if you like, is UEFA B, and that's a governed European-wide certificate. Once you've done that can take probably 18 months to complete. Then you normally wait 2-3 years, showing that your competencies to working at that level, and then you go on to the UEFA A course, which is a 2-year course, and you have to be working within a professional environment. And then, once you've got that for 2 years, lots of portfolio work to be doing, residentials where you stay away at the National Training Centre. And then there is a 5th, which is a UEFA Pro license, but you kind of get invited on that when you're working in the Premier League and that kind of level. So in terms of from an individual application, UEFA A is the top one, unless you're, say, in that first team elite environment. I have completed the UEFA A license.
Okay, so
Corey,
it's not like when I was, wait, hold up, Mark. So it's not like when I was younger, when I wanted to be a basketball coach, I took a basketball clinic and I became a coach. So it doesn't sound like that at all. So you have to be really legit.
Level 1.
Corey, the thing is
Okay.
very Corey, the thing that's very interesting is what Mark is talking about is a European Union trade attitude across that continent. If you work in the arts, you start off as an intern, you do apprenticeships, and you work through levels. If you work through trades of carpentry, you start off at a certain level and you work through. So when Mark, that was mentioned, this is very much something that is so different between the United States and the European continent, because when they do apprentice programs and internships, they aren't somebody that walks in, gets somebody coffee, and goes home. They work through stages of their craft, which is very, very common in the European market. And so when you look at what Mark did, Mark actually worked a trade as we do. We look at coaching as something unique and, the elite, where in coaching for Mark, like the European market, you work your way through it. If you're good enough to make it, then you can be a coach. And if your daddy was a coach, you ain't getting a coaching job because daddy was. And, that's why I find it very interesting when the coaches come from Europe, like Mark does, and they come through that background. You really understand they learn every aspect of their sport when they come to it. And they're not learning, they learn more on the game. But Mark, you really do come with a background, a pedigree, before somebody actually says to you, here you go ahead and coach.
Yeah, and funny you should say that. It took me 3 applications to get even accepted onto my UEFA license, let alone pass it. When I got on there, it was like I wasn't quite there, wasn't working, or there was other people working in a higher level than me, because there's only a set amount of places per year on the courses. So actually, it took me 3 applications to get on that course.
And is
So
that
Mark,
something that could grow the American game? Big, just on coaching wise, to get better coaching at different levels.
I think they're trying. I can't speak too much because I'm going to be honest. I don't know too much about the US coaching licenses. I've not done any yet. I probably will do eventually, but with what I have, I kind of feel that I'm qualified enough to be able to coach out here. But I would be interested, once I've got a bit more time and my master's is finished, then I probably would like to go on to one of those courses to see the difference. There's no doubts you'll always pick up something from any course that you go on, no matter how advanced or basic it is, or different countries, because you can't stop learning, to be honest.
So, Mark, you've got your ladies on the field right now, and when we walk in the field, and most people we can look at all sorts of formations. I mean, I don't know if you're at that stage with this Napa Valley team. Are we going to be playing basic 3-5-2 fundamental team where we've got our 5 midfielders, we've got our basic 2 forwards or attackers? Are you starting to look at things like that already for this Napa team, or is it too early into the process to start saying this is the sort of team I'll have, and this is now my basic, I've got to start working out and working in that direction to teach?
Yeah, I've definitely got ideas in my head how I would kind of like to set the team up. But for right now, 3 months ago, all of my players weren't going to be playing football this year. They didn't enjoy their experience last year. Had all quit. So when Jerry, the athletic director, spoke to me, he was very honest and said, we need you to try to field a team, but we know it's going to be difficult. And it was just so fortunate that one of the players that's on the team, I knew her dad from past experiences, and he was working for the same for Napa United. So I put a phone call into him and spoke to his daughter as part of the team. And luckily, they're a really tight group of girls. We're still talking throughout the summer, and then they said that I was coming in to be coaching. So they all decided to give it another go. So thankfully we've got a squad of players. But for right now, I'm I'm just more concentrating on improving them technically, giving a few little tactical ideas, but not too much in terms of bogging them down with formations and things. That will come closer to when we're looking to play games. But right now it's basically improving technically, but understanding that they're just coming out of a pandemic where they've had very little social interaction. So I'm just making it fun and enjoyable and getting a good team spirit together, and then to be enjoying playing and being out on the field.
I was waiting for the other soccer expert to jump in. I don't know. I think he left.
No. No, and I wanted to ask, building that camaraderie with the team, what specifically, I had trouble with phrasing this question or thinking about these questions even when I was researching it. Technically, what do you do? What are the specific focuses that you're working on technically, as you mentioned?
So in terms of technically, basic passing, receiving skills, dribbling, running with the ball, shooting. So as basic as those skills, but kind of using my experience and knowledge to not just say do this, but for them to understand why they're doing it and when to do it. It will probably looks from a basic point of view, and a basic setup, but then it comes down to the detail that we're adding in as the coach, and then them understanding the why and when.
And Mark, I'm going to stay there, because when we watched soccer this past year, we have a group of gentlemen that Corey teaches a class at our college, and we had some of our students go out to call soccer. I watch soccer games, and I know you've probably seen them in different places where it looks like it's a group of people with uniforms on that are doing a fire drill. Everybody's running a different direction, standing over on the sidelines because they don't want to run anymore. And there's one player that looks outstanding, but I think I'll kick the ball down the field. Corey will kick it back at me. I'm going to kick the ball down the field. You talk about teaching the fundamentals now. I don't, and I have to ask you to be real honest. Most of these young women, when they get to your level, if you say basic fundamentals, do they have these, besides the club players that come to you, do they have these blank looks on their face? Because I know the women's soccer that I saw on the community college level, I looked at a couple of coaches and said, Coach, do your players know what they're doing out there? And I didn't mean to be rude, but being a soccer fan, it was driving me nuts.
Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. And obviously, I'm under no illusions of the level of player I'm working with here compared to what I have done in the past. But there's been a real enjoyment for me in the last three weeks in being on the field, in seeing them enjoying playing. And I think once you've got them on their side and they're enjoying it, I think the confidence grows, and then I think all that football side of things comes along with it. And I'll give you a point today. We were out practicing, and the head groundsman is cutting the field next to us, and stopped and watched practice for a little bit. And when the girls were on a drinks break, I went over to introduce myself, because I hadn't actually met him yet. And he said, "Oh wow, like can't believe how you've been able to get all these new players." And then his comment was, last year we had some girls and they weren't particularly very good. And I had to kind of put him straight. I was like, most of these players were here last year, but maybe had a lack of confidence and wasn't performing to their full potential, or maybe didn't have the guidance to kind of help them. As I talk about the why and the how, not just the do this. That's what I'm trying to bring to the girls, and I'm seeing improvements, and I think the girls, by all accounts, are enjoying what they're doing. And we'll see how we go. We may still be short, as you saw the record last year. It wasn't a particularly flattering one, but I think that right now, in terms of the players I've got, I want an enjoyment factor from them. I want them to feel it's worthwhile being on the program. And then in the future years, I start putting a recruitment strategy in place to get the players that are on those club teams that are used to that level of training, that level of detail. Our academy trained four nights a week in our club teams. I don't know that many girls I've got on the college program who are used to training that amount, but they're definitely showing improvements. But there hasn't been any recruitment strategy in place, so it's kind of been here's the girls, here's who want to play. So I'm definitely going to do my best with them, and I hope they know that, and then we'll look to build the future of the program in the future. But for right now, it's working with the players that I've got and doing my best with them and making sure that they perform to their best.
And you mentioned that you have a top flight athletic director, and we know the community college schools in California have big money. So when you talk about the big money that community colleges have, do you have assistant coaches? Because we've been around colleges that have one coach, one full-time coach, or one part-time coach, and no assistants. They just basically have walk-ons. How is it for you as being the head guy? Do you have the assistant coaches or anyone else assisting you?
I don't right now, but there is a stipend that will be in place for when the assistant coach at our college. I don't know how others work, but the assistant coach stipend comes available when the season's being played. So after Christmas, when we go back and throughout that spring season, then I will be able to bring an assistant coach in. But right now, it's myself on the field. I've got there's two very good athletic trainers who are very helpful, and then we've got an equipment manager who takes care of everything. And so we're fine with what we have, and I'm pretty thankful that I've got those guys to help me through it.
Coach, just do me one favor. When you get an email from Corey Neyland, because you just said there's a position open, just delete it. Don't even say thank you. Just hit delete.
That will never happen.
It'll be
I can barely
Corey
walk.
who?
No, yeah.
That's exactly it.
See, Coach, I can barely walk, let alone kick a soccer ball. That's not going to happen.
You can't even spell soccer. Come on. Or football.
And just for that, I have another question for you, Coach, and we'll see if Mark gets another one off. As a football novice, I'm gonna take my time. As a football novice coming in, and I'm gonna say for myself, if I wanted to watch a team, watch a player, or watch an event, what would that be to really get me going into being a fan of the sport?
I think you pick a club that's trying to not just work on the field. You work off the field, and I'll revert back to the MPSL team that I'm working with, Napa Valley 1839 FC. Mark, I don't know if you're aware of the club or if you follow their social media pages, but that's a club that's not just about trying to perform on the field. You go to games. They've got a beer and wine garden. They've got inflatable target where the kids are running around. It's a really good family feel to it and a fun day out. So I think that alongside the game going on, that they've got it just right in terms of how they do it. And I think people going to watch those games then want to be part of a team. So then it's quite natural that then those people come to Napa United because of this team that's making the game look so fun and so entertaining on and off the field.
Coach, you brought up your gentleman out there taking care of your field and everything. So what is the facility like at Napa from a soccer perspective? You play on natural grass. Is it a good facility? Are you hoping to upgrade the facility? Where does it stand right now for your community college?
So we have one full-size grass field. There's another grass field next to it that's traditionally been used for rugby. But that's very quickly changed into become a second field for football. So the grounds people have been great in getting that cut, and they're going to do some work on that. So because it is a grass field, and when the weather gets bad, we're expected to practice and train on that. So having that second field is going to allow us less footprint on our main game field, if you like. But there are some talks ongoing in terms of having a new facility built, and I think what we're going through right now in terms of the school district fields being closed, I think there's a real need for a facility like this that they're planning on, not just for football but for baseball, for softball, is having a facility that the club teams can get regular access to keep the participation rates high, to keep the academy guys training and performing at their highest levels. So if that complex does come to Napa, it's going to be at our college facility, which would be amazing.
Let's hope that happens.
Yeah, and off the field stuff, we're good. We've got 2 excellent weight rooms. We've got our own soccer. Just our team, we got our own locker rooms, so the girls have their own lockers. There's a field drawn on the ground. So if any kind of before games, if we want to give some tactical information, we're just doing it on the floor in front of us, which is good. So it gives them a home base and somewhere where they feel like they belong, and that's their space.
And do you also have a family atmosphere at the college in the sports department? Because we've been around some schools that they're all for one, they're just family, and we've been around other schools that we care about our sport and no other sport. How is it as a whole athletic department for you over there?
Well, obviously I've only been here for a couple of months, but I can't fault the welcome I've got. Everyone wants everyone else to do well. In terms of our trainers, they look after all the sports, so we'll go up and watch some basketball training, and the basketball guys are seeing the girls in the treatment room, and it has got a good feel to it. Obviously, what I've not experienced yet is the college as a whole, in terms of that environment that you get in schools with the buzz and in everyone around campus, because obviously we're not on that. But yeah, in terms of an athletic department, it's been great, and there's been a couple of new coaches that's come to the college recently as well. So yeah, I went out and played golf with one last week. To get to know them a little bit more, which was really good. And I'm excited when everyone's going to be based at the facility full time, because right now we're having to stagger practices, so we haven't got as many people in the treatment room getting temp checked, getting any treatment. So when you're not coaching, and it's not your team's practice times, you're not really expected to be on the college site, just because everything's online. We're lucky that we've got on-field practices, but in terms of everybody being on there together and that big sort of team cohesion, I'm sure that's going to come based on my early experiences. But yeah, right now everyone can't be on the facility at the same time.
And here's an important question. Mark, go ahead and ask this one.
Well, I was going to say, Mark, you a scratch golfer?
Not quite, no.
Two-handed?
No, I play off 14, so
okay.
I do.
Well,
I
you
do
can play
enjoy
with
playing,
us.
and I haven't played as much as I would like to since I've been over here. But I did get fortunate enough to get out at the Safeway Open a couple of weeks ago.
Okay. Well, before Mark gets
I had
away,
a friend of a friend who got me in.
Before Mark gets away, Corey, no, I got to get this in because we're going to run out of time. Mark, Corey's a big basketball fan. I complain about officials all the time in the NBA. So I'm going to throw a couple things at you. And being somebody who's played on a professional level, these are easy. These are easy. But I want to know, how come in soccer not one referee or official enforces the 5-second rule on a goalie? The rule is in soccer that a goalie can control the ball for 5 seconds and must put it back in play. World Cup, nobody enforces it. Collegiate-wise, nobody enforces it. And then we have, I don't know why we even have offsides, but I got to go to the 5-second rules. There's got to be some rules in soccer that drive you nuts. I don't understand why they don't enforce these rules.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll go back to beach soccer. So there's some great rules in beach soccer that speed the game up. So if you win a corner, you've got 5 seconds to take that corner or it becomes a goal kick. So if the goalkeeper's got it and they don't enforce it, then it's basically a penalty to the other team. So harsher punishments maybe would lead to quicker decisions being made. But in the 11v11 football, that doesn't happen too often.
I was going to ask. Mark, I thought you were going to ask who the biggest flopper was: football players or basketball players.
Well, we know that answer. It's a dead tie.
No, but and you talk about the rules and making the game go. I used to think football, soccer was boring, 0-0, 1-0. But when you watch it, I've heard the game, as Mark mentioned, as poetic, as a dance.
It's a ballet.
The ballet. What makes it a ballet?
Well, it's a low-scoring game because they're quite sensible, and if you score, it's worth 1, not 2 or 3 or 7 or a bonus 1. So it's a low-scoring game because one goal's worth 1 goal, not worth 6 or 7 like in American football. But yeah, it's something I think when you kind of have from within when you're a young person growing up. It's something that is in England. It's just a way of life. I'd be at the field. There'll be so many games on TV. Go to games with my dad. Play with friends in the park. Lunch break at school would just be a 15v15 in the tennis courts. You'd play after school until your dinner was ready. You would then rush back out and play till it was dark. It was just the norm, and it's something I grew up loving, and I don't see that ever changing, to be perfectly honest.
Well, it's appreciated on my end after growing and being able to listen to Mark talk about it and being able to watch it. It's much appreciated to just appreciate the pure athleticism of the sport, and you don't realize just how athletic these players are. And we think Napa Valley is getting a heck of a coach. Somebody who, listen, you talk to you for the last hour, is going to get somebody who's going to pretty much resurrect their program. And I know Mark has another question for you.
Well, yeah, before we let Mark go, because Mark talked about his childhood and growing up with it. And of course, Corey, big basketball fan, could talk about all the people he cheered through for his life. We talk baseball with me. I'm going to go to the icon. So let's put Mark on the spot, Corey. Mark, give us your 3 top soccer players of all time. There's no wrong answer to this. It just adds into Corey's and my cachet that when somebody says to Corey, who are the 3 best, he can pull them out of the air and sound like he's actually a fan of the game of football.
Well, Zola. So I'm a Chelsea fan. Lampard, who has now come back to coach the team, which is great. But the best of all time is always that debate, and for me, it's Messi. So yeah, I'm a big Messi fan in terms of what he can do, and you say about the athleticism, and yes, he's obviously athletic because he's competing day after day, but given his height and his size disadvantage, and what he can do with the ball, and against so many times he's outnumbered, but still produces time after time. He's my number 1 of all time, to be honest.
Well, I'm with Corey Neyland. I think Napa is extremely lucky to have somebody like you, Mark. And I mean that because You love the game, first of all. You understand the game, second of all. And you embrace the game. And Corey, loving the game of basketball, would teach the game fundamentally sound. I think it's going to be a true pleasure to watch your team play. And over the years, as you get quality players and hardworking players that play the game of football, there's nothing but success in front of you. And I think Napa's made a great decision bringing you in and making you the next head coach for the women's team.
I appreciate your kind words. Thank you. I'd say probably the overall end vision for the program would be knowing that it's a community college. I think the number one target in the upcoming years would start getting girls in that come to the college, the community college route, but then look to then transfer those to the bigger schools and finish off their third and fourth years in degree. So that's I want to be kind of judged on a little bit more than just wins and losses in terms of the impact I can have with the players and what we can do with their futures in terms of helping them transfer. Because ultimately, most people come to community colleges to then as a stepping stone to want to move on. And I think if we can give them the opportunity to be playing at those schools and can help financially with scholarships, then that's what a big target of mine is to try and put that in place, which I don't think there's been too many players going on to 4-year schools on scholarship previously. So that's a big goal of mine to bring to Napa Valley College.
And that's why Napa Valley is going to be successful, because of that statement right there. We always love to hear, as Mark puts it, educators educating young people and not just the sport that they play and just moving on to bigger and better things. Mark, Coach, we want to thank you for joining us. It was all our pleasure. And
I
for
really
Mark
appreciate the
Pavlovich,
invite. I've had a great time, and I'm always welcome to come back.
Remember, Coach,
see
that's
now,
Corey Neyland. That's Corey Neyland. Delete.
no. You said the wrong thing, because next time it's not going to be about soccer. It's going to be completely about everything else. So be next time it'll be everything. So, Coach, thank you very much. We want you to enjoy your night. For Mark Pavlovich, for Ed Ford, always on the ones and twos, I'm Corey Neyland, and you've been watching the show on SportsNetUSA.net.